Hello, welcome to Olio, my show. My name is Susan Rushton, and I need to explain, as always, what Olio means. Olio is short for olla podrida, which is Spanish for rotten bowl, which I always get such a kick out of. It's a Spanish-Portuguese dish with essentially everything in the world in it. Pork in all its iterations, pig's feet, sausage, bacon, as well as chicken, chickpeas, what else? Let's see, cabbage, carrots, beans, peas, garlic and onions, and essentially everything in the world in it except tapioca and Listerine. That's one definition. Another definition is that olio is what comes in between acts of a melodrama. So you might have somebody juggling, you might have somebody singing, you might have somebody doing a skit, and none of it has anything to do with anything else, and none of it certainly has anything to do with the melodrama. So in other words, it's apples, oranges, and a monkey wrench. So welcome to my monkey wrench. Today my guest is a person I've wanted to talk to for quite a while about an organization I've wanted to discuss for quite a while. This is Deborah Nickel. Thank you very much for joining me, Deborah.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. And you are spokesperson or one of the Auburn starters? Facilitators for Death Cafe in Auburn. And if you are interested in learning more, I'm going to learn more right now about Auburn Death Cafe Auburn. They meet on the second Tuesday of each month, 6:30 to 8 p.m. at First Congregational Church up on the hill, 710 Auburn Ravine Road in Auburn. They have a website, deathcafe.com. That's nationwide, correct? Or worldwide?
Worldwide.
Worldwide, okay. And you can learn more on Facebook. They have a Facebook page, Death Cafe Auburn. And you can email Deborah at deborahnickel55@gmail.com. Okay, what is Death Cafe?
Well, first, can I add one little piece of information to that? Today is the second Tuesday of the month, so we meet tonight at 6:30, and it's the little chapel in the parking lot of the First Congregational Church. I don't remember the name of it. It's like Barosian or something. Yeah, but you can't miss it. As you're going up the hill, it's the first thing that you see on your left.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, what was your question?
That's okay. What is Death Cafe?
Death Cafe is a place where we eat cake and drink tea and talk about death and dying. And the premise of this, or the intent, is to help people become more comfortable with the topic. When you think about it, 100% of us are going to die, right? Yeah. And probably somewhere around 95% of us are in denial about it. Don't want to talk about it, don't want to go there. And it's a really...
Not only do we not want to talk about it, we don't want to think about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's really kind of a way for people to get together and talk about these things, bring them out. I think one of the main reasons that we're afraid of death and don't want to talk about it and are in denial is because it's unknown.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen. And getting together and talking with people about it, kind of like over food, like when you're in the kitchen at a party, kind of a thing, is a way for people to get more in touch with it and to eliminate some of their fear. Not eliminate, but reduce.
Discuss them anyway.
Right.
So this... I don't know if anybody else has this, took one look at this and said, oh, it's at the First Congregational Church. That must mean we're talking about Jesus and...
and I think a lot of people have that misconception. We have met at like Unity Church, and we used to meet in Ambiance, if you remember where that was, upstairs in the Gold Country Mall. Yes. We are not connected with any kind of religion. Spirituality sometimes ekes in a little bit because you can't really talk about death without having that be part of it, but we are not connected with any church. In fact, if I can give you a little background on Death Cafe.
Why, please?
It first started in the UK, offered by a man named John Underwood, who, as a matter of fact, died last year. So that was kind of an interesting evolution for the Death Cafe. And it began in February of 2012 by a woman in this country, a woman named Lizzie Miles, who was from Columbus, Ohio. And 8 years later, we have over 6,500 death cafes in 56 countries.
Wow.
Around the world.
Wow.
It's a big movement.
Yes.
It really is.
Why is that?
Because it's needed.
Okay.
And I think that people maybe, I don't know, this is my own guessing going on here, but I think that people do need it, and I think that maybe they don't realize it until they hear about something like this, and it sort of sparks their interest, and they think, you know, these are things that I've thought about. You know, I've wondered about this. I've wondered about whether or not should I be cremated or should I be buried? What, you know, I mean, any kind of question. What happens after we die? What happens when we're in the middle of the death process? You know, and then there's grief. There's so many things that
grief for the person left behind, or the person watching somebody die, or the person who is dying and is grieving about it, or both.
Well, that's an interesting question, but I think most of the time we think of the grieving person as being the one that's being left behind. I think the person going through the dying process is probably
busy.
Yeah, kind of busy with some other thoughts.
Yeah. Okay.
So it brings up an interesting, well, it makes me feel like I'm in a death cafe right now talking to you about it, because I start to think about other things that come up. Like, like for instance, things like funerals. Funerals are for the living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're so that the living can sort of adjust to the idea, and so that they can honor the person that has passed, and so that they can acknowledge that there is a grieving process, and there's something that they need to do here, you know, to be emotionally healthy still. They need to go through this.
Okay. So. How long have you been involved with this?
I've been doing the Death Cafe in Auburn for 5 years. This is my 5th year.
Why did you start? Excuse me, let me start over. What does doing the Death Cafe mean?
To me?
Yes.
I consider myself to be a death educator.
Okay.
Okay. This began a few years ago when I was a funeral arranger at Chapel of the Hills. And I used to work on Saturdays by myself. And when I first began working there, I was one of those people that was kind of afraid of death, but this was the job opportunity that presented itself. And and I'm one of those that has had an eclectic background as far as my professional career is concerned. So this fit right in. You know?
Yeah.
Working in a funeral home was pretty out there. Yeah. And this one Saturday, I was working by myself, and I'm walking around in the funeral home with the lights not even on, and realizing you're walking around in a funeral home without the lights on, and you're not even concerned about this. And I'm one of those that when I was younger, when I was a kid, used to sleep with the lights on, and you know, scared to death about death. Okay. So realizing that the desensitization that occurred for me by working in this environment, you know, full time, there was something to this. So, and also just watching.
You were comfortable.
I was comfortable, and I was really shocked that I was comfortable, you know, in that situation. So, then I after this, it's sort of an evolution of things that have occurred. After this, I went to school for my to get a graduate degree, and my graduate degree is in transpersonal psychology, which is like a holistic psychology. It takes into consideration body, mind, and spirit.
Okay.
And so my focus, this is after being a funeral director, my focus was was on death and dying while I was in school, and learned more about it, became more comfortable with the whole idea, and that's when I heard about things like the Death Cafe, and thought this is something that needs to happen, and I felt like I was the person to begin that. So I found out that there were a couple of other people in town at that point, this was 5 years ago, that were also interested in doing a death cafe. And one of them is, you probably know both of them, but one is an Auburn person, she and her husband, that just left, Valerie and John Bowman. And so Valerie and I, and Cindy Wilding is the other person.
Okay.
The three of us started the first cafe 5 years ago, up in Ambiance. And after a couple of years, Cindy and Val, you know, they felt that they had fulfilled their need to do that, and so we went on. This year and last year, Fran Haynes, who is the
dear Fran Haynes.
dear Franny, the head of the Fairies, is co-facilitating with me.
Okay.
So. And I do still work in that field. I work part-time for Philip Stein at Stein & Sons, which is another funeral services agency. So all of this has kind of evolved for me, and actually I'm in the process of writing a book now that is also interesting. It's called, it's a question actually, the title, Scared to Death of Dying? And about the things that I'm talking about here, you know, to get to know, make friends with death. It's really the other side of the coin of life.
Yeah.
It's right there with you.
Because you can't escape it.
No. 100% of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And there were times when I was younger that I had a terrible time falling asleep, because what
if I die in my sleep?
Or what happens? What happens? And I don't want to stop, but there's nothing I can do about it. Yeah. And I've been around some very old people, and some of them, and thinking now, I might feel that, okay, I've had enough of this. I'm ready, or I'm not afraid, at least, anymore.
I think that happens, again, this is my opinion, but I think that happens also as we get older and get closer, and maybe have learned a thing or two, and feel like we have done some things in our life that are of value, and so maybe we're a little more ready.
Yeah. Okay.
To go in that direction.
Yeah. Do you have any positive stories coming out of your experiences with Death Cafe? Things that where it's clear to you that you have that the Death Cafe has made a difference in these people's lives?
I can't think of a specific story to tell you, Susan, as far as that's concerned. However, like I said, this has been going on for 5 years, and we have probably about 9 people that come regularly and have been coming regularly for 5 years.
Okay.
And I think if they weren't getting anything from this, they probably would not be. They would not continue. It doesn't, there's no commitment that needs to be made. It's just, I never know who's going to show up. You know, I'm just there at the time, and people come in, the conversation is just really an organic one. It's, you know, somebody might bring an article that they saw that they thought might be pertinent, we might want to discuss, or somebody has a situation where maybe somebody in their family or something has passed. I should say at this point, we are not a grief support group.
Okay.
That is not what Death Cafe is about.
Okay.
It's not a group therapy session. It's a bunch of people getting together having a conversation. It just happens to be about death and dying.
Okay.
So people come in, they have these conversations, they find out a lot of things, and this is probably one of the reasons that I felt compelled to to be involved with something like Death Cafe is that working at a funeral home and people coming in, and you see so many people that have never even thought about what would happen when Mom dies, or have never even thought about would Mom want to be buried or cremated, and Mom has never had that conversation with them either. So bringing all of these things out in the open and having this conversation among friends where you're not stressed out, where you haven't had this major life grief event that has just occurred, getting it squared away.
Preparation for it.
Absolutely. I have a friend who, she and I at one point were trying to figure out how to start a business. She does taxes.
Yes. Okay.
So I was like, you know,
good for her.
Yeah, you can't plan for anything,
right.
You know. Or you can't. What is the saying? There's nothing certain in life,
okay, but
except death and taxes.
Yes.
So we were trying to figure out how we could do this business together. But yeah. So that's it is a certainty.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there, just out of curiosity, is there much crying? Is there much laughter?
There's a lot of laughter.
Well, good.
Oh yeah, we laugh a lot.
Huh.
You know, people tell stories, and I just thought of one story when I was working with some people. Actually, this was at Chapel of the Hills also. This was before Stein and Sons. And I was working on a Saturday, and people came in, and I kept making these faux pas. You know, it's like they said they just wanted something very simple, and I think this was early on in my career. I don't do these things anymore, but I kept saying things like, you know, oh, so you just want the bare bones, and then they would say something about, you know, well, the other people we work with a skeleton crew on Saturdays. It's like I kept hearing myself saying these things and wanting to grab these words and put them back in my mouth again, but the people were laughing.
Oh, good.
And so stories like that get told about faux pas people have made, and it lightens it. I mean, death is part of life.
Yes. Yes.
You know, it doesn't have to be this. We think of it, I think, as being this horrid thing to try and avoid, which we can't avoid, because we think of it as being suffering on both ends. We're losing somebody, and yes, you're going to miss that person, and there's going to be some suffering, some grief that goes on with it. But some of it, I think, people expect. You know, it's kind of like, for instance, let's say that you've had a relative or a friend that has been ill for a very long time, a really long time, and you've been caring for them and helping them this whole time, and they finally pass, which is usually the way it's looked at that point. But if you aren't crying and you know, weeping and wringing your hands and all of this,
you feel guilty.
Your friends are going to think you're a horrible person.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's something that comes along with it. It's like there's a certain amount of grief that is expected. And I think there are some people that can get into a place with this where sure they miss this loved one. There's a hole in your life that hasn't been there before. But
there's a load lifted.
And there's a load lifted because of the process that they've gone through, and they finally have transitioned. They finally made it, you know?
Yeah.
And there's some rejoicing, I think, that maybe is okay in a situation like that.
Or you find yourself rejoicing in private, thinking, "La."
Yeah.
And ooh, wait a minute, what's wrong with me?
And also most people feel that when somebody passes, that there's no room for having a relationship with them anymore. My personal feeling is that that's not the case.
Yeah.
You know, I think of my dad, and I have conversations with him all the time, and he's been dead for 8 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not the same, it's different.
Right.
But you can still have that.
Yes. And do you have children?
I have one.
I can imagine that your child thinks, "What's the matter with you?"
No, actually, she's pretty evolved herself
good.
with this. You know, we've had conversation about it, and she's 36 years old now, so it's, you know, not like she's a child with this. But I do think that there's something to be said for people talking about this like it's a normal part of life.
Yes.
From the time that children are young, and I think that preparing for our death in terms of the you know, the third dimensional logistics of the situation.
What do you mean?
Or something, I mean, for our funeral and things like that are things that we should be considering from the time that we're an adult. We don't ever
a funeral.
Yeah.
Okay.
But most people don't think about it until they're, I don't know, somewhere around 60, 60 years of age, something like that. And then they begin to think about it and maybe make some plans. But we don't know.
Right.
Yeah. We don't know, and neither do the people around us.
Right.
So I think there's something to be said for preparation in a lot of different ways. Maybe not
And
even just
could it
physically.
be? I'm playing devil's advocate here a little, that people are listening to you and realizing that you are a funeral director, and could it be that, well, yes, of course, she's just promoting her own business, but
we don't talk business in Death Cafe. There's none of that. They know I'm a funeral director because it's come up in conversations when we're talking about things. But business is left outside.
Okay.
Nobody is allowed to bring their business stuff into the Death Cafe conversations.
okay,
It's if you see deathcafe.com, there are rules. There's a whole outline and setup guidelines for how the Death Cafe is run.
do you have a favorite rule?
Do I have a favorite
This
rule?
is
Shoot,
something-
I should have been prepared for these kind of questions.
No, no, okay.
Just,
That's-
I think it's just important to know to note for the viewers to note that Death Cafe is not a support group. It's a place where people can come and freely talk about this, and there is a lot of laughter and not. I'm trying to think if there have been tears. I suppose once in a while people tear up, but it's not a solemn event by any means. It's not.
Good.
Yeah.
Again, I'm talking with Deborah Nickel, who is, you're not spokesperson, you are a facilitator.
I'm the co-facilitator.
Co-facilitator for Death Cafe Auburn, and it meets in this tiny little chapel of the First Congregational Church, 710 Auburn Ravine Road. That's up the hill. You can look up the organization, deathcafe.com. You can learn about Death Cafe Auburn on Facebook, and you can email Deborah Nickel, DeborahNickel 55 at gmail.com. So there are misconceptions about Death Cafe in general. Are there misconceptions about, do you talk about misconceptions about death?
Sure.
What are some of those?
That it's always a horrible thing. for one deal, that what people go through is a terrible thing. Probably the biggest misconception, and I realize I'm repeating myself, is that it isn't going to happen.
Right.
You know, it's not going to happen to me, but it is. So.
Yeah, I take care of myself. I weigh what I'm supposed to weigh. I lift weights. Of course, I'm not going to die.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But see, most of those people probably aren't going to come to Death Cafe either.
That's true.
You know.
Okay.
So I'd say Death Cafe is probably for people that are more aware of the fact that this is something that is for the entire population. Maybe a little more culturally aware. Other populations do death much better than we do in the United States.
Yeah. So, okay, if I'm, but I'm, even if I, so I'm aware, and I've taught myself, and I know I'm going to die, and I'm for sure I'm content and obvious, and I know I'm going to die. But I'm also welcome if I'm nervous about it.
Oh, yes. I think almost everybody's nervous about it. So absolutely. Anybody that's old enough to join in on the conversation is welcome to come to Death Cafe.
Okay.
So it's not great to bring your little kids, you know?
Yeah.
That's not going to...
What? You're saying this?
You know, I mean, if it's something that's discussed at home, I suppose that would be okay, but still, it's basically for and I'm not going to say it's for adults only. We've had teenagers, we've had adolescents that come and join us at Death Cafe, and they are most welcome, and many times add to the conversation in a really beneficial way.
Good.
In a very real kind of way.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to read something. Something I found on the Facebook page. It's on your poster that I've seen. At Death Cafe, people drink tea, eat cake, and discuss death. The aim is to shine a light on death with the intention of normalizing it. The lesser the fear of death, the freer we are to make the most of our finite life. How can we make the most of our finite life? When on this finite TV show.
Really? That is totally individual. My personal feeling is it's to reach our most authentic self. And that's our job. This is my opinion, while we're here in Earth School, is to find our most authentic self. And that's how we can make the most of our finite lives.
And do you find that easy? An easy thing to do?
No. We aren't supposed to swear, right? So, heck no. That's a difficult thing to do, yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
But I think that my personal feeling is that that's the job that we're given. That's the task for being here.
Okay. What if you tell somebody why you can't do something on a Tuesday night, and they think, what's your response?
I probably would laugh with them too. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, huh? But yeah, you have to. I mean, you don't have to, I suppose, but I realize that death is somewhat of a taboo kind of a subject, but 100% of us are going there, so we may as well embrace it.
Avoid the taboo, break the taboo. Okay. First Congregational Church, 710 Auburn Ravine, in the little
chapel in the parking lot.
Chapel in the parking lot.
It's a Berusian chapel, I think. For people that know the church, they know the name of it. Otherwise, it's the little chapel in the parking lot of the First Congregational Church.
Okay. Second Tuesday of each month, 6:30 to 8 p.m. deathcafe.com, Death Cafe Auburn on Facebook. Thank you very much for watching. Deborah, thank you very much for being my guest. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, you're welcome.
Wonderful.
I'll see you later.